Have you ever warned someone gently not to control them, not to prove a point, just because something in you knew this would end in pain? And they smiled, changed the subject, chose someone louder to listen to. Not because you were wrong, but because you were early. That's the strange thing about being an Aquarius. You don't raise your voice. You feel the truth first. And then one day, life repeats your words for you, not as an apology, not as recognition, just as reality. If you've ever carried that quiet knowing and learned to let go without needing to be proven right, type "I'm ready" in the comments. Because what you're about to hear isn't about them waking up. It's about the moment you finally did. You know what I've noticed about you, Aquarius? You don't interrupt life. You listen to it. While others rush to speak, to explain, to justify, you stand slightly to the side. Not distant, just observing, feeling the temperature of a room before anyone else realizes it's changed. It's almost like you hear a different frequency, not louder, just truer. Sometimes it shows up as a small discomfort you can't name, a pause in your chest, a sentence that doesn't land right, even though everyone else is nodding. And you don't make a scene about it. You rarely say, "This is wrong." You just say, "I don't know, something feels off." But that's never the kind of language the world rewards. The world prefers confidence, volume, certainty, not quiet sensing, not emotional intelligence that can't be explained in bullet points. So, you learned early to hold things gently, to offer insight like you're placing a glass of water on the table, not pushing it into someone's hands. And when they don't drink it, you don't argue. You just sit there, watching the glass slowly grow warm. There's a particular kind of loneliness in that. Not the kind where you feel abandoned, but the kind where you feel unseen in your depth. Like you're standing in a room full of people, yet no one notices the part of you that's actually paying attention. Have you ever felt that moment when you realize you understand someone better than they understand themselves? Not in a superior way, in a tender way. In the way you might recognize a storm forming in the distance while they're still admiring the sky. That's the part that hurts. Not that they don't listen, but that you already know what's coming for them. And you also know you can't stop it. Aquarius, you're not built to control outcomes. You're built to sense patterns, to notice emotional weather, to feel when something is about to shift long before it has a name. And because of that, you often carry grief that isn't technically yours. Grief for conversations that haven't happened yet, for endings that haven't arrived yet, for realizations other people will only have after something breaks. You don't talk about this much, because it sounds strange when spoken out loud. How do you explain that you're sad about something that hasn't happened, but already feels real inside your body? So you stay quiet, not passive, not numb, just aware. There's a difference. Your awareness is active, it's alive. It's the kind that notices emotional undercurrents, not just surface events. The kind that reads between sentences, not just hears words. And maybe that's why you don't argue much. You're not trying to win conversations. You're trying to understand the direction things are moving in, which raises a softer question. One you probably don't ask yourself often. When was the last time you trusted what you felt, even when no one else could see it yet? Not to prove anything, not to warn anyone, just to honor your own internal signal. Because the truth is, Aquarius, your gift has never been prediction. It's perception. You don't foresee the future like a headline. You sense it like a mood entering the room. And that kind of knowing doesn't come with applause. It comes with silence, with waiting, with learning how to sit beside realities that haven't arrived yet without needing to explain yourself. Which is why your journey doesn't look dramatic from the outside. No big speeches, no emotional monologues, just a steady deepening, a quiet becoming. And maybe this part of your life isn't about teaching anyone anything anymore. Maybe it's about finally trusting the part of you that always knew, not so you can be right, but so you can be gentle with yourself for being early. Because there is a difference between being misunderstood and being ahead of the emotional timeline. And you, Aquarius, have always lived a few steps into the future of your own heart. There's a moment, Aquarius, that doesn't get talked about much, not because it's rare, but because it's hard to put into language without sounding strange. It's the moment when you watch someone you care about walk towards something you already feel will hurt them. And you don't feel superior, you don't feel victorious, you feel quiet inside. like your heart is holding a secret it never wanted to know. You see the pattern forming before it becomes a story, before there's evidence, before there's a lesson anyone is ready to learn. And the hardest part is that your knowing isn't dramatic. It's gentle, almost tender. It arrives as a subtle tightening in your chest, a heaviness behind your eyes, a sense that time has already whispered something to you, but forgot to tell the others. You try in your own soft way, not with warnings, not with fear, just small truths, careful questions, little pauses in conversation where you hope they might feel it too. But intuition doesn't translate well in a world that wants proof. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't show receipts. It simply waits. And waiting is where the pain lives, because you are not grieving what has happened. You are grieving what is about to happen, which is a very lonely place to stand. Most people think pain comes from loss, but for you, Aquarius, it often comes from anticipation, from loving someone enough to sense their future heartbreak while they are still smiling in the present. You sit with that knowledge quietly, not to control anything, not to interfere with fate, but because you don't know where else to place it. There's a strange responsibility that comes with being early to the truth. You don't get to be surprised. You don't get the comfort of denial. You carry emotional information before it becomes public, and no one teaches you how to hold that. So you learn to soften around it, to let compassion be bigger than the need to be understood, to love people without needing them to change on your timeline. That's not weakness. That's emotional maturity most people only develop after something breaks. You somehow learned it before the break, which makes you feel older than your age, not tired, just seasoned. Like your soul has already lived through a few endings your body hasn't reached yet. Have you ever noticed how you rarely say "I told you so"? Even when you could, even when the moment arrives exactly as you felt it would. Instead, you show up with presence, with listening, with the kind of support that doesn't remind people of their mistakes, only of their humanity. That's because your intuition was never about being right. It was always about staying connected, about choosing love over ego, understanding over control. And yes, it hurts to feel things early. It hurts to sense storms before clouds form. It hurts to carry emotional weight before it has a name. But it also means you are a bridge between timelines, between what is and what will be, between innocence and awareness. You don't prevent pain, you soften its landing. And maybe that is your real gift, not foresight, not insight, but the ability to sit with truth before it is comfortable and still keep your heart open. Which leads to a quieter question, one you might want to sit with tonight. If your intuition didn't exist to protect you from pain, what if it existed to teach you how to love more deeply through it? There is a quiet kind of moment that arrives without announcement. No music, no dramatic turning point. Just a subtle shift in the air, like something invisible finally landing. It usually comes later than you expected, sometimes months, sometimes years. Long after the conversation ended, long after you stopped explaining, long after you learned how to stay silent without feeling small. And one day, out of nowhere, life begins to speak in your voice, not through you, through them. They reach a wall, a situation collapses, a relationship reveals its cracks, a dream loses its shape, and suddenly, the words you once offered gently return to them. Not as memory, but as reality. You can almost feel the echo, not because they call you, not because they admit anything, but because something inside you recognizes the timing. This is the part no one tells you about, how strange it feels when the truth finally arrives without you. When the lesson lands exactly where you pointed, but your name is no longer attached to it. They do not say you were right. They do not say they should have listened. They simply grow quieter, more thoughtful, more careful with their words. And in that silence, you sense it. A gentle regret moving through their body. Not loud enough to become apology, just enough to become awareness. For a moment, you think you might feel satisfied, vindicated, seen, but you do not. What you feel instead is something softer, almost tender, like watching a child finally understand a story you read to them years ago. There is no victory in this, only a calm recognition that the universe does not rush truth. It waits until people are ready to be touched by it, and that readiness never comes through pride. It comes through pain. This is the paradox you carry, Aquarius. You do not want to be proven right. You wanted to prevent the hurt altogether. So, when life repeats your words, it does not feel like triumph. It feels like a quiet ache that has finally found its place to rest. Because now you know. They understand. But they understand through experience, not connection. They learned the lesson, but they lost the bridge. And that is the part that lingers with you in the late hours. Not anger, not resentment. Just a gentle sadness for the conversations that could have healed, but arrived too early to be received. Still, something beautiful happens inside you in this moment. Night, you realize you no longer need to speak the truth out loud for it to exist. You no longer need witnesses for your inner knowing. Life itself becomes your confirmation, not to boost your ego, but to release you from carrying responsibility that was never yours. You begin to understand that your role was never to save anyone, only to plant awareness. What grows from it belongs to them. And this understanding shifts your heart in a subtle way. You start listening more than explaining, holding space instead of offering direction, trusting that each soul has its own timing, even when you see the ending before the story unfolds. Have you noticed how you no longer feel the urge to warn as much as you used to? Not because you stopped caring, but because you learned something deeper. That truth cannot be delivered. It can only be lived into. So when life repeats your words, you simply breathe. You let the echo pass through you without attachment, without identity, without the need to be remembered. And maybe this is another quiet gift of your nature, the ability to recognize when your voice is no longer needed, because the world itself has learned how to speak, not in your name, but in its own time. There is a different feeling that comes after the echo fades, not relief, not pride, something quieter than both. It feels like a long exhale you did not realize you were holding, like setting down a heavy bag you forgot was on your shoulder, not because someone thanked you, not because anything was fixed, but because something inside you finally loosened. You notice it in small ways. Your chest feels wider, your thoughts slow down. You stop replaying old conversations in your head, rewriting lines, imagining better timing. The story no longer needs editing, and that is when you understand something important about yourself. You never wanted to be right. You wanted to be released. Released from explaining, released from translating your inner world into something acceptable, released from carrying responsibility for outcomes that were never yours to hold. There is no celebration in this moment, no inner applause, just a deep sense of being finished with a chapter you never officially closed. It feels like standing alone at night, looking up at a sky with no questions left. Not because you found all the answers, but because you stopped needing them. You realize how much energy you once spent waiting for recognition, for someone to finally say, "I see you. I understand now. You were right." But recognition is loud. Freedom is silent. Freedom does not announce itself. It arrives as stillness, as space, as the absence of emotional noise you had learned to live with. You are not lighter because you won. You are lighter because you let go. Let go of being the messenger. Let go of being misunderstood. And let go of the subtle tension of hoping people would grow faster. Something shifts in the way you relate to time. You stop anticipating outcomes, stop rehearsing endings. You begin to trust that life will unfold without your supervision. And this is where your power becomes very quiet. You no longer need to intervene. You no longer feel responsible for saving anyone from their own lessons. Not because you care less, but because you respect the rhythm of other souls. You see now that true wisdom is not about being ahead. It is about being present. Present with what is, not with what could have been, not with what should have happened, just here. There is a kind of dignity in this stage of your journey, a softness that comes from not proving anything anymore, from not auditioning for understanding, from not waiting for validation to feel real. You begin choosing peace over explanation, silence over correction, alignment over approval, and slowly your relationships change. Not because people change, but because you stop meeting them from the place of effort. You meet them as yourself, unfiltered, unjustified, unapologetic in the most gentle way. Have you noticed how your energy feels less urgent now? How you no longer rush to clarify your intentions or defend your perspective? That is not detachment. That is emotional sovereignty. You belong to yourself again, not as an idea, not as a role, but as a lived experience. And maybe this is what freedom really looks like for you, Aquarius. Not escape, not independence, but inner permission. Permission to be as you are without needing a witness. All permission to exist without explanation. Permission to let life move without needing to guide it. The world did not finally understand you. You finally understood yourself. And that understanding feels like standing at the edge of something vast, not excited, not afraid, just calm. As if for the first time, you are no longer trying to arrive anywhere. You are already where you need to be. Something else changes after that quiet freedom settles in. Not in the world around you, in the way you look at yourself inside it. You begin to notice how little you need now. Not in a detached way, not in a cold way, but in a gentle, grounded way that feels honest. There was a time when being understood felt like oxygen, when you wanted someone to see your depth, name your intentions, confirm that your way of being made sense. You waited for mirrors, for recognition, for someone to say, yes, I see who you are. But lately, something has softened. You no longer search for yourself in other people's reactions. You no longer measure your value through responses, returns, or emotional feedback. You start feeling real even when no one is watching. And that is a very quiet kind of maturity. It shows up in how you move through rooms, yet you listen more than you perform. You speak less, but your words feel anchored. You stop explaining your choices, not because you are hiding, but because you trust your inner reasoning enough to let it stand alone. There is a new stillness in you, not emptiness, not distance, just clarity. You begin choosing peace over being impressive, depth over visibility, alignment over applause. And the strange thing is, you feel more alive than ever, because when you stop asking who sees you, you finally hear yourself. You notice what actually brings you joy, not what looks good on paper, not what earns approval, but what feels like home in your nervous system. Your nervous system becomes your compass now, not your audience, not your past, not your expectations. You feel the difference between what drains you and what nourishes you, between what demands energy and what restores it, between what once excited you and what now feels like noise. And you start honoring those signals without guilt. You leave conversations that feel heavy. You stay in silence that feels rich. You choose solitude not as escape, but as nourishment. Have you noticed how your sense of self feels less fragile these days? How fewer things feel personal? How rejection no longer shakes your core the way it used to? That is not emotional numbness. That is emotional security. You are no longer asking to be chosen. You are choosing yourself in small, consistent ways, in what you tolerate, in what you invest in how you speak to your own heart when no one is listening. This is a subtle power, not loud, not visible, but deeply stable. You no longer need the world to reflect you back to yourself. You recognize your reflection from within, and that changes everything. You begin living less for the story you can tell, and more for the life you can feel. You care less about being perceived correctly, and more about being honest with your own experience. You stop shaping yourself for other people's comfort, not out of rebellion, but out of self-respect. There is a dignity in this phase that feels distinctly Aquarius, a kind of quiet independence that does not isolate, but liberates. You become a witness to your own becoming, not performing growth, not proving evolution, just inhabiting it. And maybe this is the real turning point, the moment when the question shifts from who sees me to who am I when no one is watching. That question does not demand an answer. It invites a life. One lives slowly, consciously, from the inside out, not to be seen, but to be felt. There is a gentle irony that appears in this phase of your life. Just when you stop waiting for anyone, some people begin to remember you. Old names resurface in your mind like distant songs. A message appears that feels familiar before it feels real. A voice from the past reaches out, not urgently, not dramatically, just softly, as if nothing ever changed. And for a moment, you feel it. Not excitement, not longing, just a quiet recognition. They are looking for the version of you who existed in their memory, the one who explained more than necessary, the one who stayed gentle even when something felt wrong, the one who made space for others even when you were disappearing inside it. But you are not there anymore. Not in anger, not in bitterness, just in truth. You listen to what they say. You feel the emotion beneath their words. And you realize something simple and profound. They want continuity. You want integrity. They want to reopen the story. You have already become someone new inside it. This is where the quiet boundary lives, not as rejection, not as closure, but as self-recognition. You no longer bend your reality to make others comfortable. You no longer soften your truth to protect fragile dynamics. You no longer negotiate your inner peace for the sake of being liked. And it feels strange at first, because your kindness used to look like flexibility. Your love used to look like patience without limits. Your compassion used to look like silence. But now, your compassion includes you. You begin to see something clearly. Some of what you once called forgiveness was actually self-abandonment. Some of what you once called understanding was emotional self-neglect. Some of what you once called love was simply fear of being misunderstood. This awareness does not harden you, it refines you. You still care, you still feel deeply, but you no longer disappear in the process. When someone returns now, you notice the difference immediately, not in them, in you. Your body does not tense the way it used to. Your heart does not rush ahead of your boundaries. Your mind does not begin rewriting yourself to fit an old connection. You stay present. You stay honest. You stay with what feels true in your nervous system. And sometimes that truth is simple. I have grown beyond this space, not because the other person failed, not because the past was wrong, but because you are no longer the person who needed that chapter to feel whole. There is a quiet grief in this, not sadness for what was lost, but tenderness for what once felt necessary. You can honor what existed without returning to it. You can appreciate the lesson without repeating it. You can love the memory without reopening the door. Have you noticed how different your yes feels now? How it comes from your body, not your fear? How it feels calm instead of urgent? That is discernment, not avoidance, not emotional distance, but clarity. You are learning that connection does not require self-sacrifice, that intimacy does not require shrinking, that love does not require silence. And this is where your evolution becomes visible in the most subtle way, not through new beginnings, but through what you no longer return to. You realize that growth is not always about adding something. Sometimes it is about staying with yourself long enough to stop going back to what no longer fits. You are not closed, you are just complete. Complete enough to recognize when a door opens and choose not to walk through it. Not because you are afraid, but because you finally trust where you stand. And maybe this is one of the deepest forms of self-respect, to let people remember you, without needing to become who you were for them again. There is a moment that feels almost invisible when it happens. No fireworks, no announcement, just a quiet inner shift that changes everything without needing proof. It feels like waking up one morning and realizing you are no longer waiting, not waiting for messages, not waiting for signs, not waiting for someone to finally choose you. You are simply here, breathing, existing, belonging to yourself in a way that feels natural, not forced. For a long time, you thought the gift would arrive from outside, in a person, in a new beginning, in a moment that would finally make sense of everything you endured. But the real gift arrived differently. It arrived as a decision you barely noticed making. You stopped abandoning yourself in small ways, stopped over-explaining your needs, stopped shaping your energy to be easier to receive. You began meeting your own gaze with respect, not as an idea, not as a concept, but as a daily practice. You started listening to what feels right in your body, not what sounds impressive, not what earns approval, not what keeps others comfortable. And something subtle happened. Life began responding to you differently. Not because you demanded more, but because you no longer asked for permission. You showed up grounded, calm, centered in your own frequency. And people felt it. Not in dramatic ways, but in how conversations shifted, in how opportunities aligned without effort, in how doors opened without you knocking. You did not chase a better life. You embodied it. You stopped asking to be included, and somehow you became magnetic. Not loud, not performative, just deeply present. There is a special kind of power in choosing yourself that does not look like confidence. It looks like peace. It looks like walking away without anger, like saying no without guilt, like staying when it feels nourishing and leaving when it does not. It looks like knowing your worth without needing witnesses. You are no longer negotiating your existence, no longer proving your value, no longer shrinking your needs to fit someone else's comfort. You simply take up the space your soul requires, and the world adjusts, not because you forced it to, but because energy always responds to clarity. Have you noticed how things feel lighter lately? How your choices feel less complicated? How your intuition feels sharper but gentler at the same time. That is alignment, not with destiny, not with purpose, with yourself. You finally became the person you were waiting for, the one who stays, the one who listens, the one who protects your emotional landscape with tenderness and strength. And maybe that is why everything feels different now. Not perfect, not complete, but real. You are no longer asking the world to define you. You are defining your relationship with the world. You are no longer searching for a place to belong. You are becoming the place you return to. This is the gift most people miss because it arrives quietly. No ribbon, no ceremony. Just an inner yes that never leaves you again. You chose yourself, not once, but over and over, in every small decision where you honored your truth. And now, life does not feel like something you need to earn. It feels like something you are finally allowed to experience. That's not because you changed who you are, but because you stopped asking if you were allowed to be. There is a quiet moment that happens before everything truly settles. Not loud, not dramatic, just a soft realization that nothing is chasing you anymore. And maybe for the first time in a long while, you notice how your breath feels when it is not waiting for something to happen. No countdown, no hidden expectation, no unfinished sentence hanging in the air. Aquarius, this is what it feels like to arrive without making an announcement. Not the kind of arrival where doors open and people clap, but the kind where you sit down inside your own chest and the room finally feels familiar. You used to carry so much invisible effort, trying to explain yourself in languages no one taught you, trying to adjust your shape so others could feel comfortable around your edges, trying to go back to versions of people who no longer existed, except in memory. And now, look at you, not hardened, not closed, just softer in a way that does not leak anymore. There is a different gravity around you lately, less pull toward fixing, less urge to prove, more space between your thoughts and your reactions. You are not numb, you are present. That is a rare kind of peace, the kind that does not need to be shared to be real, the kind that does not need witnesses. You start to enjoy silence again, not as emptiness, but as shelter. You listen to yourself without rushing to answer. You let moments end without trying to extend them. You let people leave without rewriting the story. And something subtle shifts in how the world meets you. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped negotiating your right to exist inside it. This is the part no one talks about in healing. The part where you no longer feel the need to be interesting to be worthy. Where being calm feels more powerful than being impressive. Where your nervous system finally trusts the ground beneath you. You begin to recognize happiness in quieter forms. A slow morning, a conversation that does not perform, a night where nothing important happens, and that feels sacred. And here is a gentle question for you, Aquarius. When was the last time you felt this comfortable not becoming someone else? Because this state you are in now, it is not a pause. It is not a break between chapters. It is a destination you used to think only existed for other people. You are not waiting to arrive anymore. You are already standing in the center of your own life. No mask required, no explanation needed, no emotional luggage at your feet. Just you. Breathing, existing, belonging to your own time. And the most beautiful part, you did not find this place by searching harder. You found it by stopping the chase, stopping the self-abandonment, stopping the silent hope that someone would one day return and make everything make sense. You became your own sense. So, if nothing feels urgent right now, if nothing feels dramatic, if everything feels strangely simple, that is not emptiness, that is home. And the universe is very quiet here, because it knows you are finally listening to yourself instead. And before you go, I want you to notice something. The fact that you stayed until this moment. Not because you were searching for answers, but because something inside you already knew where this was leading. Aquarius, that quiet feeling in your chest right now is not emotion. It is recognition. You did not come here to be fixed. You came here to remember. Remember how it feels when you stop outsourcing your worth, when you stop waiting for permission to feel whole, when you realize that the future is not something you chase. It is something that gently walks toward you the moment you choose to stand still. There is a different kind of power in you now, Not loud, not urgent, not trying to convince anyone. It is the power of someone who finally trusts their own timing, who no longer needs life to look a certain way to feel meaningful, who understands that peace is not a reward, it is a decision. And if you felt seen tonight, even for a second, that is not coincidence. That is alignment. Somewhere out there, other Aquarians are listening to the same words, feeling the same calm, all taking the same breath you just took. You are not alone in this frequency. You are part of a quiet constellation of souls who chose awareness over attachment, presence over performance, truth over approval. So, let me leave you with this blessing. May you never shrink again to fit into someone else's idea of love. May you never doubt the voice that led you here. May you continue to choose yourself even when no one is watching. And if something in this message resonated with you, I invite you to leave a comment, not for me, but for the version of you who once needed to hear it. Subscribe if you feel this space belongs to you. Stay if you sense the journey is not finished, because the next message is already forming, and it is meeting you exactly where you are. Trust yourself, Aquarius. You have always known the way.